Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This week, what I'm covering is Newcastle City Council have unveiled some new plans to redesign the city centre to make it a more people-friendly place. This is happening sort of post-COVID, and they're using COVID as sort of an explanation of why they're redesigning the city centre to draw more people in. I think these ideas were coming pre-COVID, but they're obviously using the idea of COVID redesigning cities, hopefully for the better, because I'm sure you can see in the UK with high streets declining, there's shopping centres going bust, we're sort of into going bust, and they were the major shopping centre owner in the UK. They own the Metro Centre and Eldon Square. Now I don't see Eldon Square closing anytime soon due to Newcastle City Council's large stake in it, but the real retail demand for all these business spaces going down, and I think the city centre is going to change from a very much commercial space into a lot more of a destination for sort of leisure, I guess the word is. So what they unveiled were sort of the plans to transform a number of key streets within the city to make them more people friendly, to sort of green them up, increase sustainability. Because a lot of the city centre, and this is not just Newcastle, but a lot of city centres in the UK are very void of any greenery, any life, as in wildlife. And I think it's a real missed opportunity to make these spaces more sustainable in terms of their nature aspect, but also greenery just makes a place look better. A good landscaping scheme can make the ugliest building look nice. If we look at the proposals, so Newcastle City Council say they want the city centre to be safer, greener. They also want to see a reduced number of vehicles within the city, which I think is great. So we'll start with what can be seen as Newcastle's main architectural street. It doesn't serve a lot of prevalence as a commercial centre, but this is sort of the biggest missed opportunity in the whole of Newcastle is Grey Street, this lovely Tyneside classical street. The only way to describe it is it's often voted one of the best streets in the country, made out of lovely sandstone, lovely curving facades that goes down towards the quayside, and it's a real way of connecting the quayside and sort of the regeneration down there to the city centre. So I think it just plays a vital part in sort of the movement of people throughout the city, but also just as a place to use. Pre-COVID, this street was nothing more than a car park, and it had car parking on both sides, and you had very narrow pavements either side. This always felt like a missed opportunity, and I think a lot of people have recognised this. I think even the Chronicle have made an article saying this was a missed opportunity. So if you're getting that amount of criticism for how you handle the street, I think it really calls for a time to change. So during COVID, what they did was they announced their first plans to redevelop the street, and what they did was to change this from a two-way street into a one-way street going down away from the city centre, allowing sort of buses and traffic to go down this way. They'd ration the number of parking spots, so I think there's a few disabled parking spots available, and what they put in as well was a cycle lane going uphill. This is a very steep hill coming from the quayside up into the city centre. So putting this segregated cycle lane in, going up, was a great idea, because you'd be going a lot slower going uphill, and it's good to have that sort of segregated space, because it is a difficult climb. I cycle a fair bit, and I struggle going up this hill quite often. And then sort of if you're going downhill and using the cycle lane, you just merge with the traffic, which is going quite slow because this leads to traffic lights, so there's no real issues of safety there. I think that's a fairly good idea, and it's a real way to use this space. So what this also did was actually widen the pavements, which has allowed for restaurants and bars to get outside seating and sort of pavement cafes, which is something that was never been able to be done before on Grey Street. And when you've got such a lovely facade for these buildings, I think it's a great place to sit outside, and I hope during the summer I'm able to sit outside in some of these places, because a lot of businesses have now opened these pavement cafes. So the proposals, what are now being shown for this future transformation, are as follows. All we've had released so far is a single image from most streets, sort of demonstrating the overall idea of what they want to sort of propose. For Grey Street, we see the whole street being fully pedestrianised, with a sort of a green strip heading the whole way down the city, and this will probably go as far as Dean Street. This, I think, is just a great proposal. They look like they're going to increase the amount of seating, and just greening the street up is something that it really needs. And I think the choice of low shrubbery here is a more interesting idea than putting trees here. I think by putting low shrubbery here, you're not going to block the facades. You're going to leave the sort of the lovely curves and the lovely sort of street scene able to be seen, by also increasing the sort of the stormwater drainage, also the sort of green feeling of this area. And I think it'll make this street a lot more feel like a parkland than it does as a moment. And what they say is that Grey Street will become the sort of the primary pedestrian route down to the quayside, which it does serve this purpose at the moment. There's not really any other major pedestrian route down to the quayside, but sort of pedestrianising this will sort of solidify that, and I think that's a great idea. Coming up from Grey Street, you then get to Monument, and that's mostly pedestrianised. For now, I'm going to go on to Northumberland Street. So Northumberland Street, previously, if you've seen my Newcastle's Unbuilt Motorways video, Northumberland Street used to be the A1. So you'd come across the Tyne Bridge and you'd run up Northumberland Street and join the Great North Road. This changed when they sort of, over time, as this was the main shopping street, but also having all that traffic on just had very clashing needs. Traffic was luckily eventually diverted around by the Central Motorway, which, despite all its flaws, it allowed the street to become slowly more and more pedestrianised into sort of the pedestrianised street you see today. And that's great that Northumberland Street is pedestrianised and it's a great street to go down, but the thing is, it lacks really any solid seating, any sort of permanent seating. It has 3 trees down the whole length of the whole street, and it just really lacks anything to sort of say this. I think its biggest redeeming feature is the tiny strip of green wall on M&S, Northumberland Street. But in terms of the proposal, the image we have released for Northumberland Street is as follows. The existing green wall will be retained, and the whole facade of Northumberland Street M&S will feature these green walls, which do loads to sort of beautify the street in its first place. It also seems that the number of trees on Northumberland Street will be increased. As you can see in the proposals, they're looking to increase the number of trees, with actually some permanent benches installed. Some benches, I believe, moved to the street after the Great Exhibition in the North, and they've been sort of placed around in sort of different formations. There was a pop-up park one summer, and they've done a few sort of street interventions, I think, to sort of get the gist of what's going on. But now we're going to finally see some actually decent benches on Northumberland Street, which is great for all people alike. The more time people spend in city centres, the more likely they are to spend money. But also, providing these benches gives people an excuse to be in the city centre without spending money, which I think post-COVID and post-high street decline is something you'll want. Other than this proposal to sort of increase the number of trees, it seems to put some new mosaic on the floor. One of the features I'm not sure which are in the video, and if you do know what this is, please put in the comments below. But there seems to be a sort of a single thin tower by the entrance into Eldon Square, well, Eldon Square now. And it's not very clear on the proposal what this is. I'm not sure what this will do or anything. I'm quite confused by this, if I'm honest with you. So yeah, the bio for this one was sort of transforming the street to be green, to make it a relaxed place that can be enjoyed all year round. Coming off Northumberland Street, what you get are, there are 3 side streets really that run off Northumberland Street. I'll include some video of these now, but these currently are probably the biggest missed opportunity in the whole of Newcastle. They really don't serve that much of a purpose, and they're used more of a car park than anything else, which I think is just such a shame. What you actually have, let's talk first with Ridley Place. Ridley Place is the sort of first street coming off Northumberland Street if you're coming down towards Monument. Again, this was a car park mostly. If you compare other city centres, the side streets to the main pedestrian thoroughfare are treated a lot better. They'll have benches, they'll have places to sit and things to do. But Northumberland Street and its side streets like Ridley Place have just been underused and underdeveloped. there has been an increase in the amount of independent food retailers setting up on Ridley Place. So this has sort of led the council to come to the conclusion of increasing this as the main independent food retail place for the city. This can be seen by the current proposals. I'm going to talk about the COVID changes. The COVID changes actually saw what's called parklets being added to the street, and these are small sort of parking spaces converted into outside seating for restaurants. So the Dumpling House, La Batista, and the Social Cafe added these small parklets. And I think this really showed you what this street could be. It could have nice outside dining and just allow people to sit in the city centre and enjoy sort of like an alfresco dining vibe. So the proposals for the new sort of redevelopment of the street, what we see here is sort of a pedestrian destination for local independent retailers and for markets and pop-up retail, food and beverage. So the proposals, what you see are they've added new street lighting already to the street, and they're looking to put some sort of artwork dangling above these lights as well. The improved street lighting already just really makes this street so much nicer. But what it seems to be, the transformation here seems to be quite a what I'd call ad hoc. It seems to be able to change quite easily. The parking spaces are now replaced with sort of more of these parklets with more of a cohesive theme in sort of a rusty coppery metal look. These will include sort of planting and other sort of greenery to brighten the street up and require sort of no groundworks and are easier to implement sort of street trees. And this street will obviously be pedestrianised as well, so I think that's great that this side street will be pedestrianised, because this actually can form a link from John Dobson Street, the main cycleway, into Newcastle city centre and the sort of the retail destination. The next other side street is Northumberland Road, so this one actually has no proposals to change. This is due to the fact it serves the NCP car park and a lot of cars. I believe this one will be retained for sort of its parking, and it also forms a taxi rank for Northumberland Street. So I believe that Northumberland Road will stay completely unchanged. I do believe there is a need for the taxi ranks there and sort of the parking that is provided here, but I feel the taxi rank could probably really be located to another location. The next major street coming off Northumberland Street is Saville Row. Saville Row has been sort of in a very neglected and sorry state for a little while now. I saw this picture, I think it must have been around the 1980s, of Saville Row, and it previously had these lovely sort of a brick design with sort of trees, shrubbery and planting, and it made it actually look like a really nice side street to Northumberland Street. At some point these are obviously removed and we get the Saville Row we know now, which just sort of runs out towards the Northumbria Bridge. Again, a missed opportunity. And what the proposals see here is a place for arts, innovation and design, somewhere independent retailers can showcase local products and art. So this is very interesting to see this sort of take they're taking on it. Whereas Ridley Place actually did have a few independent retailers and markets and sort of the food and beverage scene already. Saville Row doesn't really have this arts, innovation or design scene. It's actually, its main shops are Tesco, a hairdresser's and a tailor's. So it really doesn't have any solid theme for it many. But the council are sort of imposing this theme on it, which is quite interesting for it coming from a top-down perspective to see if this will stick. Because I believe the Ridley Place being sort of entrenched in an existing idea of the beverage and food idea makes it a lot more sustainable than the council suddenly deciding, no, this one will be arts and innovation. So it'll be yet to see how this one will sort of take hold. And what we see down Saville Row is this sort of yellow theme and yellow benches, which I think you've seen on Northumberland Street before. A number of sort of hanging lanterns. It seems they're going to replace the aging bricks paving here and sort of brighten the street up. There also seems to be another green wall running down what is now, it used to be a hardware retailers, I can't think of the name of, it used to be Class Olson, but this is now a clothes shop. And they're sort of putting a green wall in here. And that's very interesting. Another green wall, obviously have to be maintained and funded by someone. It'll be interesting if the clothing retailers will do this or it'll be the council. What the proposals for Saville Row don't actually show is the biggest detract of Saville Row is the fact it forms part of the Skywalk network. Just under Saville Row, there's a dark, dingy, often horrible smelling cut through that leads into Princess's Square. Princess's Square is not featured anywhere on these proposals, and it actually makes one of the largest sort of bits of open space and squares within the city centre. It has an alright sort of landscaping scheme as it is, nothing special. But I think any scheme for Saville Row I wonder what they're going to do with this alleyway to make this nicer, to improve this and make it sort of have a better appearance. And if Princess's Square could be made as sort of have more seating in it already, it would make it a lot more successful, I think. So these proposals sort of stop here and say this are the changes. But I think in order to sort of have a completeness to this video, we also need to talk about Blackett Street and Old Elm Square. So Blackett Street is also going through a bit of redesign. I'm not sure if you've seen over the previous summers. They've been testing out pedestrianising this street as well. At the minute, a number of bus routes run through here. And what it does, it disconnects the pedestrianised Northumberland Street from the pedestrianised sort of monument area. This sort of severs this pedestrianisation and sort of makes a real barrier to people crossing. What you have now is a bus route running through the city centre, which doesn't need to. The buses running through this location can actually cause a barrier to elderly and disabled people by almost severs the rest of the city centre off from them. I just don't think it's a very safe way of crossing. I think it really cuts off that part of the city. So yeah, they've been testing out these new sort of proposals to pedestrianise it. They've done bus route studies to reassess running the buses around Market Street. The bus companies kicked off at this and said that the proposals were silly and that elderly and disabled people would be sort of disadvantaged from city centre, which I think is obviously an important thing to consider. I just think bus routes were worried mainly about losing the revenue of being this close to the city centre. But yeah, so they're planning on pedestrianising Blackett Street as well. And this will, not including within these released images, there are a number of images for the pedestrianisation of this, the greening of this street as well. I'll show you some of those. But yeah, I think they're not as announced as these in terms of their finalised design, but it's interesting to see this street will be improved as well. As well as this, Old Elm Square, the biggest open square really within the city centre, again has, I think its last landscaping scheme was in the 90s, but this again is really underused for what it could be. The benches I think are highly used and the pigeons love it. For what this square could be, I think it really lacks as well. So I think the idea is to change this into an arts and cultural venue where people can hold exhibitions and shows. The scheme seems to mention sort of including fountains, water features on the square. And I think this is probably the best improvement. The grass on this is probably not the best for all-weather use, and sort of really increasing the use of this will be a great idea. That's the sort of the overall of all these proposals that are coming to the city centre. I'll update you as more sort of goes on if we see any changes happening. But I thought I'd just make a video talking about all these changes and what I sort of think of my first impressions of these original images. So yeah, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think of these sort of proposals, anything you'd like to see in the city centre or anything you'd like me to cover. But yeah, I'll catch you next time.